Welcome to today's show. Here we are at the point where I have to make a decision about what I'm going to do today. All the things that I take into consideration as I'm rolling out of the marina. The tide is very low today. That has a big influence on the areas that we can fish. The wind direction is going to dictate the direction that I drift. You think about options later in the day. Where do you want to be? You know, if plan A doesn't work out really quick, you want to be able to shift gears, and I don't like to spend a lot of time running around. So this morning, we're actually going to hit some of the deeper grass beds, which today will be very shallow because the tide is so low. So I'm always looking for that range of depth where I can see fish, where I can find some fish, think about the direction that the wind is blowing, how I'm going to approach those flats, and then later in the day when we want to have options, and it's looking at the big picture. But it's always a decision-making point of the day when I get here to the end of the channel. You have to nail it down on where you're going to fish. So big part of the program is making that decision, and it's part of the game. It's part of figuring it out. So this morning we're going to take a little boat ride. We're headed out to Ransom Flats near the edge of the intercoastal. There really is some deeper sand holes connected to deep water, and that's where we're going to start today. Beautiful morning out here. Started out with some soft plastics, had a few follows. Wanted to cover more water with the top water. The top water is a great fish finder. Picked up one redfish and then this beautiful speckled trout. Just aggressive this morning. 2 or 3 leaps out of the water, going for it, and then finally ate it. So we're gonna let this beauty swim away. Flats of Redfish Bay are just custom made for topwater fishing. We have vast, endless seagrass meadows of super shallow water. So we're not pulling fish from the depths. You're not pulling them up from the bottom. You can see what's going on. This morning we have swirls, bait fish, just a lot of life in the water. So blind casting, I call the topwater is my fish finder. You can cover distance, it's quick. You can hit a lot of spots. You can cast it a little bit further. It's a little bit heavier. With a lightweight spinner, you can just hum it out there and cover a lot of area. So the water temperatures have really been warming up. It's amazingly odd for the middle of December. I mean, here we are, and the temperature is going to be 80 degrees today. Started out with 0 wind this morning. We expect the wind to really kick up this afternoon, but the forecast isn't always 100% accurate. So we have great conditions, throwing the topwater, picked up a couple fish this morning, started out with a red speckled trout. We really haven't been at it that long, so I'm gonna stick with the topwater this morning, see how it works out. The white with the red head, it's a classic. It's victimized many fish over the years, so a nice lightweight spinner is a great fish finder, covers a lot of water. Amazing how much you can find. And it's not the best tool in all of the areas, but Redfish Bay, the coastal bend area around here, just ultra shallow grass, it's gonna be in their face. It looks like what they expect to see. When you're out here and you're seeing mullet, you're seeing schools of stuff, this duplicates exactly what those fish are looking for. So even on a tough day, if they're not in the mood, this will entice them to hit it. So we've had a very interesting day today. Redfish Bay around Aransas Pass. But today, Yes, very interesting. Had a plan this morning, talked about how I was going to stick to the plan, and that went out the window pretty quick. We shifted gears. And so, yeah, a pretty good example of how the full moon works and how the full moon affects a day of fishing out here. You can always expect that early morning action to be good. We took off with a couple of nice redfish, nice speckled trout, some life in the water, but shortly after the sun came up, that action faded away real quick. So we stuck with it. We beat it up over there around Ransom Flats on the south side of the bridge here between Aransas Pass and Port Aransas, and we gave it a fair shot. And that's just part of the deal. You got to know when to stick with that plan and when to give it up and shift gears. So we spent the next couple hours running around the north side of the bridge. We hit Terminal Flats, we went over towards Estes Flats, and now I'm back over here in South Bay. So we saw some fish, very lazy fish. They just weren't going to hit. So sight casting on the ultra shallow grass, like I said, went out the window pretty quick. We pulled up over here, we hit the drop off, we've been casting. I've caught like 12 trout in a row, all very small fish. Casting the ball-tail shad right along the drop off, and the tide never really came in strong today. It's still very shallow, so you expect these fish to be piled up in the hole. So we really shifted gears. We started out on the grass beds, we were beating it up, we went to the top waters, got a few fish, but nothing real exciting. That's just the full moon blues that come with this. It's like 2 days after the full moon. There's a lot of theories with that, you know, whether the fish feed at night. We went through a couple of major feeding periods, you know, that we fished through, and none of that action really developed. So just as a total different way of approaching things, I came over here to this deep cut. We got super shallow grass behind us, super shallow grass in front of us, but it's right on this deep green hole. And what I'm doing is I'm throwing right towards the drop off, right across this cut, and it's just loaded with little trout. So, you know, we're going back to back, cast, letting it sink down, give it a second, pop it again. Had a couple decent ones mixed in, a lot of tail grabbers, a lot of touches, but very interesting to see how the rhythm of the day goes. I mean, we're past noon now. We fished, you know, it's about 1 o'clock. And the forecast today was, you know, you can look at the forecast and you can make a plan, but that really didn't stay true today. This morning we had very calm winds, actually foggy this morning is how it started out, but we got a pretty good breeze kicking up. We launched the drone this morning, flew over some of the really beautiful areas that we were in, the shallow, and there's another little trout right there, little tiny trout. We're fishing for the fish. We want the fish that would eat this fish is what we've been looking for. And yeah, that's a pretty small example of what we've been doing today. So you come out here, you work hard, you take your swings, and you just never know how the day is going to work out. It really is just the reality of fishing. But you know, I shouldn't be too critical. Had a couple of nice fish early this morning, and then the rest of the day was just a bit of a grind. And you know, as far as entertainment goes, we have found a nice spot here that's got fish in it. You know, the big ones are down there. It's just a matter of waiting until they get into the mood. And this one here, I mean, it's we're going up the ladder. Not much bigger, but bigger than the last fish. You never know what you're going to see out here. It was really fun this morning. We launched the drone. We saw some dolphins. We had one little rogue dolphin that was just terrorizing mullet in 1 foot of water. That was really fun to watch. A lot of bird life, a lot of birds moving around. But as far as the fishing goes, you know, they just weren't on the prowl. They weren't out looking to hunt things down. The fish that we saw, that we spooked out of the sand holes, they were there, but they were just really tough to get them to bite. But as far as the day goes, it's lessons learned. It is the rhythm of the day. And so it kind of breaks the rules of what I would expect. Here we are, the middle of December, beautiful conditions, can explore many areas, great temperatures. The water temperature is up to like 68 degrees today, where it was down in the low 60s earlier this week. All those things combined, you would expect to really have some active fish. You have the opportunities to look in those places. You have great conditions. You think you have everything figured out, but it's always a challenge. It's always a part of trying to figure it out. So this morning, as we were drifting the flats in the shallows, and we've talked about in previous episodes the options of rigging weedless, shallow, or rigging up for deep. Deeper. Deep is very relative. Whenever you hear me talk about deep water and shallow water, it can be a matter of just a couple feet. So when it comes to rigging up something that's very light for weedless, this is going to apply to 1 foot of water. It's going to apply to 18 inches of water. It's not going to sink. It works very high in the column. You can work it with a little bit quicker and actually turn it into a top water. You can make it wake on the top. But for where I'm sitting at this afternoon, I'm going to rig up to go a little bit deeper. And when it comes to tying fluorocarbon to braid, I do not like extra tackle mixed in. I don't like a swivel. I don't like things that are going to affect the line. So what I'm tying here is a line-to-line knot. I use a uni knot. And what it is you tie 2 knots, and when they pull together, they anchor against each other. And the cool thing about the uni knot is you can clip it right at the tag end, right up against the knot. So it is very, very smooth. Even with all the floating grass that we have in the water, and you can see with the wind blowing, it's blowing a lot of grass across the water this morning or this afternoon. So even that tag end that's pointing forward from the fluorocarbon will pick up grass. So it's a huge advantage to not have the tag end pointing in the grass. And so what I'm going to tie on here is a jig head. It's a 1/8 ounce jig head, and it will sink. It makes a big difference. This will actually work. As light as it is, it still gives a very lifelike appearance in the water, but you can fish this thing 4 to 6 feet with a little patience. And then when it comes to tying on the jig head, I use a loop knot. I want this thing to dangle freely in all directions. I don't want the fluorocarbon to steer it in any direction. I don't want the leader to control the lure. It's a nice insurance policy. It's 20-pound fluorocarbon, so it's real abrasion resistant, but it's very stiff. So as this lure and this hook is bouncing around in the water, it does not have a tendency to catch itself. It stays straight and it stays away from the hook. And because I'm going a little bit deeper and the water is a little off color today, I'm going to go with a much darker soft plastic. This is plum with a chartreuse tail, K-wiggler, ball tail shad. And because it's very streamlined and because it doesn't have a lot of resistance in the water, it is also going to sink a little faster. And because it's deep water and there's not a lot of grass here, the exposed hook is very consistent for getting hookups. When a fish just grazes it, if they're lazy, if they're just hitting it from the side or barely picking it up, the exposed hook does much, much better in catching that fish. Oh, came back. All right, working a little deeper, dark colored worm, but still little fish. And you know, if you were to sit here, there's days that you can go through 100 of these little trout, just catching them one after another, and then all of a sudden something changes. Another school will move in, big fish will start to bite. So, I mean, that is not an uncommon scenario where we pull up, we find little trout, and you go through a lot of fish until something shift gears. You can have a school of reds that will come through this pass. You can have some bigger trout that may be laying out in deeper water, and something in their brain tells them that it is time to feed. They will make a move up this cut. It's like a little fish highway. Everything that they want to eat lives in this grass. Safety is in the deeper water. So during their dormant times when they're just not feeding, it's impossible to make them bite. But when you find a spot like this where you are consistently catching fish, when you haven't caught fish all day, and you move into an area like this, it's not a bad place to be patient. Patience can be a part of this game. It's not one of my finer virtues. That is why I like drifting. I like casting. I like covering a lot of areas. But there's days when that game changes, and you have to adapt. You have to be able to shift gears if you want to catch a fish. And we're going to hit a few more spots. So just part of the rhythm of the day, part of, you know, going through this, I fished 5 different areas working my way to where I'm at. I'm going to hit those spots on the way back in just to see if that changes, just to see if something is there that we missed along the way. Probably give this, you know, I'll pull up and I'll hit these spots 15 or 20 minutes. You get a feel for what's going on. Is there a sign of life? Is it worth sticking it out? Are you kind of know when to move? You know, you take another chance. But today it's been, you know, we've dedicated a lot of hours to searching. The early morning started out great, had a long time in between with just nothing happening. And then as we came to the deep water, there are a lot of fish here, but there are a lot of little fish. So we're going to work our way back. We're going to hit a couple of flats across the way back. Plus, with the wind that we have now, the drift is going to be much faster. You cover a lot more water. So in the name of searching and trying to figure out what to do tomorrow, how to attack this game tomorrow, you know, that will apply. The afternoon game will apply to tomorrow morning. You know, you can come out early, expect that same rhythm. Going to have some slow time in the middle. The wind is definitely going to be blowing. So we're going to hit a few more spots. It was a really fun day. Always appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Hopefully the lessons that I learned today and I share with y'all will apply to your own fishing trip. The full moon is always a challenge. Post full moon is very much a challenge. And those rules are meant to be broken. None of this is etched in stone. There's a lot of theories on the full moon. Somebody caught fish today. Somebody broke that rule. One of these people out here, one of these boats, I'm sure they came in with some nice fish, and they may have another story. So always very interesting, but I do appreciate y'all being here. Thank you very much for joining the show today. Look forward to seeing you on future episodes, and we'll see you next time.